So are you planning for retirement all the wrong way? Today we're going to take a look. Stay tuned for Prudent Money. Good afternoon. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. I do have a line open if you'd like to call in. The number to call is 1-877-913-5357, 1-877-913-5357. You can also go to the website at www.prudentmoney.com and send a question to the Ask Bob section, and I will get that taken care of for you. That's all at the website, prudentmoney.com. 1-877-913-5357. Sorry about the technical difficulties there for a second. Having a little bit of trouble with the board here in the studio and didn't have the mic turned up. So it always helps when you have the mic turned up. So the almost heart failure I caused you, Chris, I appreciate you being okay. 1-877-913-5357 is the number to call, and I do have a line open. So I don't know if you know this, but I want to go ahead and mention this today so that you are aware of it, because what's interesting to me is that if one of the big banks, as much bad news, negative press, negative PR has been in the news through all the years, when they do something good, you think that they would put a huge advertisement together in public relations team and make sure everybody knows about it. Well, Bank of America, and supposedly, you need to check with your own bank, but Bank of America and supposedly all the other big banks have reduced their overdraft fees from $35 down to $10. $35 down to $10, and they've eliminated the fees for bounced checks. Now, probably in almost 21 years of doing radio, I don't think I've ever come across a story where the Bank of Americas of the world have reduced fees. So it makes me wonder, is this kind of a smoke and mirrors thing? But either way, whether they were making a lot of money off of it or not, the overdraft fees are down 35 to 10 and no fees for bounced checks. So I guess that is good. My guess is that they are making so much money off of credit cards, and that it's kind of making up for maybe that reduction in fees. In the last couple of days, I keep saying we're going to talk about balance transfers, and always there's a lot of things to talk about, and we never get to the end of the program and there's any time left. Today I'm bumping balance transfers up to the top of the order of stories we're going to talk about today, because I get questions about, should I transfer debt from one credit card to another credit card? And just curious about the pros and cons. And there's a lot of balance transfer offers. If there's one thing that you got to think about it, if you're a big bank and you've got plenty of money to lend out, why wouldn't you aggressively extend offers for credit card debt? Pull over that $10,000, $20,000 worth of credit card debt that you're paying too much interest on, and have a 0% introductory APR for 18 months, up to 21 months if you pay everything during that period of time. And so you're seeing more and more and more and more that what the big banks are trying to up their risks of credit card debt, consumer credit for a second. They've got money. They've got money to. They're getting anywhere between almost 15% for good credit, all the way to 26% for what they deem as bad credit. I mean, think about that. If you loan out some money to a friend and charge them 20%, it's a pretty good return on your. That's a great return on your money. The only real risk that they face is the risk of default. But how many people with good credit that they're giving the best credit to, and this is a Wells Fargo card I'm looking at, the best credit interest rate of 14.49%, which is great return on their money. How many of those people are probably not going to default on their debt? So here's the things you got to be careful about. One thing that I am noticing is that this range from good debt, good credit score to bad credit score has gone up a lot, and if it covers a big range. You could still get one of these cards, and I don't know what their basis of good credit, what good credit means to them or bad credit means to them. But you take Wells Fargo as a good example, 26.49%. They'll still give you a credit card. They'll still let you move that money over at 26.49%. When that is going to be your interest rate, because you're at the bottom end of their credit scoring risk system. There used to be a big spread between the APR, or the interest rate for cash advances and overdraft protection advances. But today, they're almost the same. In fact, there's only 1% difference. That's how high the normal rates have gone. Now, I've mentioned this before, and I'll mention it again. The Card Act, which was signed into law in May of 2009 by then President Obama, was designed to curb consumer credit card abuse, and that was mainly charging penalty rates. Well, when I was writing my book Deceptive Money and researching penalty rates, they were as high as this credit card rate is, 26.49%. None of them went over 30%, so they were in the upper 20 percentile. So it's you've got to be careful about, if you are a borderline, if your credit report is average, your credit score is average, and you're paying 18% on your debt, I sure would hate to see you transfer that over and go from 18% to 22 or 23% because Wells Fargo doesn't like your credit score. Got to keep that in mind. And I think that's the biggest thing. Of course, what you want to get a hold of is the card member agreement, and that's where that tells you everything that's going on with this credit card. It's all the fine print, generally 12 to 18 pages long, and it gives you all of the information that you want to be careful about. Here's just a little bit of the card member agreement for this particular Wells Fargo card. First of all, and this is pretty much across the board, and keep in mind, when you sign on the dotted line for any credit card, you're giving them the permission to change this contract and change this members agreement at any point that they want to. Credit card contracts are the worst consumer credit contracts consumer contracts that you can sign. Any agreement that you sign that you agree to the fact that they can change the agreement, it's just not a good agreement. But you are in risk of default and immediate repayment of balance in full if you fail to pay a minimum payment by the payment due date. Now, how many listening, and I've done this before, accidentally paid a credit card bill late by a day or so? According to this particular agreement, they can put you into default immediately. They can put you in default if any payment is returned. They can put you into default if you don't honor the terms of this agreement. You made an untrue statement on your application. And I was thinking about this the other day. I think I mentioned this in the radio at one point. Let's say it says to put your income down. And you know how there's the tendency on when you put your income down to ballpark it. Say you make $75,450 a year and you put down $75,000. Well, technically that's an untrue statement. That puts you at risk of default. Of course, if you file for bankruptcy, they're automatically going to put you into default. If it's a joint account, a default by one of you will be a default by all of you. Pretty wild. 1-877-913-5357. This is Bob Brooks. Stick around. I'll be right back. Welcome back. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. 1-877-913-5357. Yeah, so they have these agreements, you could have a spouse. Here's a worst case scenario. You could have a spouse that has a credit card that you may or may not know about, and you're just a signer on that credit card as a convenience thing. You don't ever use it. It's all your spouse's debt. And your spouse misses 2 payments. He goes into default. You go into default. You're both of your credit scores and are going to be pretty much ruined for a period of time. That's a new one, because I know it's been there I know it's been a part of card member agreements for a while, but it's not been too long since they added that to there. Here's a new one, and this one is a very concerning one, and I think a warning sign that goes back to the range of interest rates. If they consider you good credit, you're about 15% interest rate. They consider you a bad credit, you're almost 27%. And they can do that credit reevaluation at any given time. They call it re-verification of credit information. It says we can review any information you provided on your credit application at any time. This may include requesting credit bureau reports. So if they look and they see that you have a lot of checks on your credit report, looking at your credit by creditors in the hopes of opening up new credit accounts, they can consider that a risk. They can verify your current credit standing, and they can verify your employment, assets, and income records. So basically, a re-verification of credit information, to me, speaks that they can look at it and re-verify, and if they don't like it, they can raise your interest rate. So I'd be very, very leery of that. Then if there's a dispute, you've agreed to arbitration. Arbitration is a very consumer unfriendly process that the creditor will put their attorneys up against whoever you can hire that you can afford to pay for, take you through a very long process, lots of court fees, lots of arbitration legal fees, and in other words, it's just not even worth it. And you understand and agree that you and the bank are waiving the right to a jury trial or trial before a judge in a public court. So they could do whatever they want to you, how horrible it might be, and you still have to go through arbitration. As I sit here and think about this, I think about how just absolutely horrible these contracts have become, even more so than when I wrote my book almost 13 years ago. This is Bob Brooks, 1-877-913-5357. Today I went through the process. I was preparing for the webinar we're going to give next Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of next week. And when I say this, I really mean this. If there's one webinar in 2022, that you need to watch, it's this one. How to create a simple retirement plan. Because a couple of things that came to my mind today. The first one was that there's so many, and it's just based on the emails that I get. I get all these emails that this is going to happen, bad news here, bad news there, you got to be prepared for. All these things are going to happen to us financially, and for some reason it seems like I'm on every newsletter list that a person could be on. I was reading this and I was thinking to myself that the only way to be prepared for for a recession or a bear market or anything like that is to know your numbers. And what I mean by know your numbers, I mean to know your retirement numbers, to know your plan. And what I'm going to go over on during the webinar that you can sign up at prettymoney.com for what I'm going to go over is how to create a basic retirement plan that you don't need to pay somebody to do. You don't need to go see a financial advisor, that you can get the numbers yourself. And I'm going to show you. And so to do that, I had to go out and I had to find a retirement calculator that fits the criteria to get the real numbers. And what I found was a bunch of junk. Could not believe it, because I don't really pay attention to retirement calculators, because we have our own planning software here. But I did find one that met just about every one of my criteria, except for, but nothing that changes the need not to use it. So I'm going to show you how to use that one. That's free. There's no cost to it, and you can create your very own. You're going to go, wow, this was much more simple than I thought it would be. But it will keep you forever knowing the answer to the question, am I on track? Am I behind, or am I ahead of the game? And that's what you can. That's the first place you go if you have questions about your financial future. And if you're making a decision, you can go back and look. Okay, if I do this, then I can make this decision, and it just makes it a lot easier. So go to PrudentMoney.com and sign up for the webinar next Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. 1-877-913-5357 is the number to call. So, have you heard about the debt collective known as 50 over 50? This is a group of student loan borrowers over the age of 50 who are going to strike, and I'm still not sure what they're going to strike over. No, I'm sorry. They're going to, obviously, what they're going to strike. They're student loan borrowers, and if President Biden resumes the student loan payment system come August 31st or September 1st, they are going to strike against that. They are planning to make 0 payments if the pause expires after August 31st. Now, there's 2 or 3 takeaways from this. The first thing is they can strike all day long, but if you've got student loan debt, you have, hear me out, no leverage. No leverage, no negotiating power, nothing. If you have student loan debt, they collectively remove any power that you could possibly create through bankruptcy. I mean, they own a part of your life, student loan debt. So I can almost say this with 100% certainty that they will, and I could be wrong, they will extend that student loan payment deadline. And the reason I feel so strongly about it is because President Biden would be committing political suicide if he didn't do that. According to the press release, these borrowers are striking to highlight the destructive impact of student loan debt on older Americans. Now, this one gentleman says, and I'm going to have to ask John Apollo about this when he comes on the program next month. Quote, I have been paying for over 20 years, and the interest just keeps adding up, and the amount has ballooned from $50,000 to over $100,000. Now, in normal student loan settings, I don't believe that's possible. I tried several times to get relief by working in nonprofit organizations to get the public service cancellations, but was unsuccessful. I feel that I'm in a trap with no escape. I get that, and I get that that's a horrible situation to be in. At the same time, at what point do we take responsibility over signing on the dotted line? I just think it's unfortunate that individuals are willing to put themselves into, like I said, into a situation with the government where they have no leverage at all to prove a point that the government doesn't really care one way or the other. It is unfortunate. If you want to apply for the nonprofit programs, you call your student loan servicer, and John always says that they're a big help. So I'll ask him about that when he comes on the program. Once again, the Prudent Money webinar next week, how to create a simple retirement plan, is you can sign up for that by going to prudentmoney.com and just registering ahead of time. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thank you so much for listening. If you got a question for me, please go to the website at prudentmoney.com and send it in, because we are all out of time. Till we do meet again next time, keep the faith and have a great rest of the day.
That's all the time we have for today. Questions or comments for Bob, or to find out more great information like what you've just heard, visit www.prudentmoney.com. Be sure to join Bob Brooks again for the next edition of Prudent Money.